All right, people, I'm Chad Sanders at Chad Sand on Instagram. You know me as an author, TV writer, podcaster. I make things, I sell things in Hollywood. That's what we're going to be talking about today, is specifically selling a vertical series in 2026 in the foreseeable future. I made a video yesterday. It's a 3-minute video that's on my Instagram right now. It's on my TikTok at Chad Sand on Instagram. And it walks through step by step what I'm about to walk through in longer form, which is why vertical series are today what podcasts have been for the last, let's call it 10 to 15 years, which is to say, you saw this crazy breathless rush by everybody across entertainment, in tech, across industries. Everybody rushing to go and make a podcast because they thought it was the thing that was going to make them rich, or that was going to give them this giant audience, or some sort of silver bullet to having access to people to get them to buy stuff. And for some people, it was some version of that. Some people were able to pull off concepting a podcast, producing that podcast, selling it to a big studio or network, and then leveraging that access, that money, the resources, the opportunity into other stuff. I was one of those people. But today and in the future, while there are still trickles of that podcast explosion still happening, you see Netflix buying up podcasts because they're trying to buy people's audiences. What's going to be the next evolution of that same podcast gold rush as it appeared to be is going to happen in the vertical series and microdrama industry. It is already happening. That's what the video I put out yesterday was about. Now, before I go any further into explaining in long form why, if you were thinking about making a podcast before, why you should channel that energy into making a vertical series, or at the very least a pilot episode for your vertical series. Before I go into that, I want to say that on this Friday, I am having a webinar. It's probably going to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours. I'm going to walk people through every step of what it will take to launch your vertical series in 2026. All right. If you want to sign up for that, the link is in my bio on my Instagram at Chad Sand. But before we get to that, well, actually, you can go get to that right now if you want to. I want to talk about this video I put out yesterday. Right now, it's doing very well. By my own metrics, I would say it's a Steph Curry three-pointer is the language that we use over here, which means it has over 1,000 shares in less than 24 hours. It's got somewhere around 10,000 impressions, but most importantly is those impressions are resulting in new followers for my brand, which is basically me. And we're going to eventually talk about how I want to reshape that in some ways. But as it stands today, that's what's going on. So in beats, first, let me just outline what the 3-minute video, what I called out in that 3-minute video. All right. Started with this, which is there's a headline floating around that TikTok launched an app over the weekend, right? A few days ago, called Pine Drama, which is basically a network or a storage house for micro series. For people who want to go and watch microdramas, vertical series, just like flip through them, TikTok launched an app to do that. Now, there are vertical series and microdrama networks popping up all over the place, right? Just like this one that TikTok, as reported by Business Insider and others, has launched over the weekend. And there's a reason why these networks for vertical series are popping up all over the world. And that reason is because, as it stands right now, as reported by Variety and others, vertical series and microdramas are already an $8 billion annual industry, most of that taking place in Asia as it stands. But you can feel the buzz, the rush that's happening right here in the United States for people who want to get their hands into and on this vertical series and microdrama money, this industry that is exploding. As reported by Variety and others, that industry is projected to reach $26 billion annually by the year 2030. Now, all of that begs the question, which is, how much is a vertical series, how much is a microdrama actually worth? And now we're going to get into my explanation of why this is the new version of the podcast explosion of a few years ago. Because the answer to how much a vertical series or a microdrama is actually worth is Nobody knows, right? Nobody knows. People are projecting. Even the projections I just read you, which were probably devised by economists and salespeople and people that want other people to come and invest in the vertical series and microdrama industry because it's good for their own pockets. No, nobody knows how much these things are worth. That much I'm certain of, because a few reasons. Similar to a podcast, especially when the podcast industry was just developing, number one, nobody knows how much it is worth for somebody to watch one episode of your vertical series. In other words, nobody knows yet how much that makes that person likely to go click within your vertical series to commercial products that are being advertised there, to apparel, etc. Nobody knows how frequently people are going to sign up and subscribe to paywalled vertical series. Nobody knows exactly how much a hit vertical series is going to sell for in the market to a Netflix or an HBO Max or a Hulu, because this is all new. There haven't been enough repetitions. There hasn't been enough frequency of anything in this marketplace for people to know exactly how much these things are worth, which makes this so much like the podcasting industry of the last decade. Because in this time where there's headlines and it's buzzy and there's celebrities like Kim Kardashian and Ashton Kutcher and companies like Netflix and Fox and Apple, all with their names attached to this idea of vertical series, that makes everybody want to jump in. That makes everybody afraid of missing out on the next best thing, afraid that if they don't invest something into this, including myself, I feel this way. I'm starting to shoot my vertical series on Thursday. This Thursday, 2 days from now. People are worried that if they don't invest time and resources and energy into this, that this will be the thing that takes off because everybody's saying that's what's going to happen, and that they're going to miss the boat on the opportunity they could have had to launch themselves as an actor in one of these things, to launch themselves as a creator in one of these things, to be the studio that had the first super hit that evolved into products and movies and theme parks and all this other junk around a micro series, a microdrama, a vertical series. Now, think back just 5 minutes ago to the last decade of the podcasting industry, right? Think about how many friends you had personally who said to you, man, we got to start a podcast. I'm going to start a podcast. Think about all your friends who went and maybe they started to record voice memos. Maybe they bought a fancy camera. Maybe they actually put a couple episodes of a podcast together and launched it out there into the ether to see what would happen. Everybody wanted to get in on podcasts because the buzzy news that was floating around was this, all right? You had Call Her Daddy, Alex Morgan's podcast, which was licensed first by Spotify and then by Sirius XM reportedly in the hundreds of millions of dollars range. Smartless, right? Which Apple picked up for, I want to say $90 million. You got Joe Rogan, which has had reported numbers for its licensure in the hundreds of millions of dollars, not even to mention just the platform, the economic, the political sway that podcast created for itself by captivating and capitalizing on a giant audience, okay? Spotify, Apple, now Netflix, bunch of companies rushed into the podcasting industry. A lot of people rushed into the podcasting industry hoping that they were going to capitalize on what was an unknown quantity and value. That is about to happen. That is happening right now in the vertical series and microdrama space, right? Now, notice what I'm not saying as I talk about why companies wanted to invest in podcasts. It wasn't because of some math problem that they did on a spreadsheet that said, okay, if we compile this podcast plus this podcast plus this podcast, it'll equal this much return on investment over X amount of years. Now, I'm sure somebody in-house at Netflix or some consultancy firm or a finance firm had to put together numbers like that in some regard for some of these companies, because some of these companies are public and they had to be able to show sort of a mathematical reason for their investment. But by and large, people invest in stuff like this, including the people who are investing their time in stuff like this, because they're just excited and they think this is their chance to pioneer something, to make a mark, to be a part of something that is the thing, and hopefully to make some money while doing it. That's how people feel about vertical series and microdramas right now. Now that can comprise a bubble. meaning that can make up for a bunch of energy and money and expenditures and resources poured into something that's not actually worth all that money. And I would say in this case, I think that's likely, right? The podcasting bubble was a bubble. The streaming bubble was a bubble. I believe this is the next bubble. However, that does not mean that some people are not going to use this moment to find their way into the industry at a cost that is low to them and find a return on their investment in making one of these things. And that return is going to look like attention for them, awareness, resources given to them to make more stuff, a brand name as a creator. Let me give you an example of somebody who did that during the podcasting boom, who's not world famous, right? Who didn't get $100 million. And that's me. And so I am going to walk you through in a way that I believe is replicable in the vertical series industry, how I use that big boom bubble moment of podcasting, the podcasting industry, in the wake of the $100 million deals that were flying around to the superstars, I and many others used that moment to break into podcasting to make not 7 figures, but 6 figures for myself in a way that supported me for a couple years. It gave me a chance to have money coming in the door so I could focus some of my energy on making new creative things, building my audience, which I am still continuing to leverage, which is still giving me access around this industry. It's giving me access to your eyeballs right now. So let me describe that. Man, I'm super charged up. I can feel it. All right. So remember, I am framing this way so you can draw your own parallels to the vertical series industry. Everywhere you hear me talking about podcasting, just flip the words in your head to microdramas and vertical series because I think it's a 1-for-1 overlay. Okay. Now, here's how I got into podcasting. And I've had 4 podcasts, okay? I've had, my biggest one was an 8-part series on Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert Network, which was called Yearbook. Armchair Expert was another one of those podcasts that got $1 gazillion from a major streamer because of the podcasting boom. So I got one on there. I have an Audible original show called Direct Deposit, which is the one I'm really going to dig into in detail how I got that deal. That was a 6-figure deal, which kept me alive for the next 2 years. It paid my bills for 2 years. I had a podcast with Modern Family's Julie Bowen called Quitters, which was one that she and I produced independently together. And I had another one that I personally produced independently called Nothing But Anarchy, right? So 4 podcasts I had in the podcasting boom. All those made money except for the one that I did independently, okay? And that one even made a few bucks on touring and stuff like that. But like what I'm trying to tell you is that I made a living from podcasting for a few years, but this is how I broke into podcasting. When the podcast boom was going on, I wrote a piece, okay? A piece for the New York Times, all right, which was about the struggles that were happening in 2020, the racial tension and conflict that was going on at that time, my own personal reconciling with all of that conflict, and just like how I was relating to friends and family at that time, okay? I was not a known writer. I was not a known quantity. I did not have tens of thousands of followers. I think I had something like 2,500 followers at the time. I had virtually, compared to the entertainment landscape, I had virtually no following. All right. I was in a similar position to the position I bet many of you are in at this time. Okay. Now, when I wrote that piece, I got a DM from a person who I had never met in my life. Okay. That piece was published in the New York Times. All right. That was my first big published piece. However, that could have been published in any publication. It could have been published on the internet. It could have been published on Twitter. Could be published on, on Instagram, whatever. Anywhere that I could get somebody's attention, that is a good enough place to reach people. Now, I got a DM from someone when I posted that on my Instagram, that same piece, okay? And that person said to me in so many words, I'm an executive at Audible. I think you have a really sharp voice. Have you ever thought about podcasting? Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. It turns out that I had, okay? Because at that point in time, I had already begun to develop a few ideas for different podcasts that I might want to do myself. I had never done a podcast. I had never even been a guest on a podcast at that time, but I liked podcasts. I was listening to them, and it was a hot industry, which I knew. Now, what I had in my memory bank was that at that time, what I had done in my career was I had sold a TV show. Now, again, selling a TV show did not build an audience for me. It did not make anybody know who I was. This person didn't know who I was from selling that TV show, okay? Selling a TV show, unless you already have a name, is generally something that happens in quiet. You get a press release. That's nice for your friends and family to see sometimes, but it doesn't make you famous. Nobody knows who you are. But the way that I had sold that TV show, I'm walking y'all to an important place, okay, is that I had a TV pilot that got a major director, executive producer attached to it. Spike Lee, I'll just give the big reveal. I met him outside of a coffee shop, walked up and pitched myself to him. We took it all over Hollywood. Nobody wanted to buy it. And then I came back to New York, and this is a very important point that I want you to log in your head and not release. So many people had told me while I was taking this TV pilot out all over the, not all over the world, all over Hollywood to pitch it to different networks and studios with Spike. They said, if you want to sell your show, you should start shooting your show. If you want to make a product, you got to start making the product. If you want to, let me say it slowly. If you want to sell someone something, you can't just tell them about it. What I had in hand was a written TV pilot and a pitch. Not enough. If you want to sell someone something, you have to show them what it is. If you want to sell a TV studio or a network something, they need to see a piece of what it is that you're trying to sell them. The imagination gets relief when you show them instead of putting something in front of them to read or telling them about it. And so when everybody said no thank you, Netflix, Hulu, HBO, Amazon, when everybody said no thank you to my pitch for my TV show with Spike Lee attached as a director and executive producer, I came back to New York and I spent $4,000, too much money, shooting a proof of concept video, one scene of my show, so that the exact tone and texture and visual presentation and character and story elements of the show were clear. $4,000. I cast friends. I got a director who I had a relationship with to direct it, a person who was my age, went to my college, not somebody who himself had no credits at the time. We went out and shot the thing. I took it to the very next network and they bought it in the room after watching it in the room with me. The lesson was logged. If you want to sell something, you got to show people what it is. Now, zoom forward, okay? That show never went. It never got greenlit. It never was on TV. So it's not like anybody found out who I was from that show. Like so many other writers, I was able to sell something that didn't get put on TV. But now, it was time that I had an opportunity to sell something to Audible. Audible is among other things, has a podcasting network, okay? Which means that Audible at the time, during this podcasting boom, were writing pretty big checks, as far as I saw it, to creators who could bring them 8-part, 10-part, 20-part series to their network, to their platform. And I took it upon myself to go and make a 1-episode version of the podcast concept that I had in mind. I can't even remember what it was called in concept when I started writing it. I think it was called New Money. Yes, it was. And me and Amanda Cowper, who was my creative partner on that project, she and I went and we made 1 episode with a guest, which was my friend Quincy Avery, 1 episode of that of that podcast. We attached a document that said, this is the show, this is the audience, the tone, the format, the production budget. This is what it's going to look like, but we just made the 1 episode. Now, for a podcast even, that just meant 1 recorded episode. There was no video, which was, as far as I could tell you, very straightforward and easy to create. It just meant that I had to run 1 good interview that I captured on audio, attach that to a document that said, this is what the rest of the podcast looks like. And I submitted that to the person who had found me in my DMs, the executive at Audible, and she helped me develop that pitch into something that Audible might be willing to buy. We didn't know, it was prospective. And Audible made me an offer, right? Me and Amanda, that was my teammate on it. I can't tell you exactly how much that offer was for, but what I can say is that because the industry was hot and I was bringing them more than just an empty pitch, they were willing to pay six figures. I can tell you they paid me almost six figures as a host alone for the show, which isn't even to mention the cost of production, which they paid to my production company to make the show, which was enough to produce the show and for me to live for 2 years. Okay, let's take everything I just said and apply to the vertical series microdrama landscape, all right? Because I ran that same play, making a proof of concept. I've run that in the TV industry where I've sold multiple TV shows. I've run that in the movie industry where I've sold multiple movie scripts. I've run that in the podcasting industry where I just told you how I got a six-figure deal for it. I've run that in the publishing industry, which is a little bit different because a book proposal is just a written document plus, ideas on market segments and audience, etc. But the point that I'm trying to make to you is if you want to burst into any of these industries when they're hot, okay, let me define hot. When people have more money to spend than they have creative. In other words, when corporations have what feels like an insatiable appetite for creative product, for a specific type of creative product, that was podcasts at the time. In those moments when everything is about buy up material, when the leverage being created is in catalog, by trying to overwhelm audiences by being the one house that has the most stuff, the most best stuff, in those moments, if you want to capitalize on those opportunities, you have to have product. It is not enough to have conjecture. It's not enough to have speculation. In other words, it's not enough to come in and say, this is my podcast idea. It's going to be like this. It's going to be like this. It's going to be like this. It's not enough to come in and say, here's my vertical series idea. It's going to be a love story set in here, here, here. And people are going to look at you like with blank faces because everyone's imagination in a pitch meeting is different. Meaning when you go and pitch a room full of executives on your micro series, vertical series idea, everyone in that room is seeing something different in their mind based on what you're saying to them. But if you show them something, suddenly we are all looking at the same thing. We're all connected here, which is what our ambition is to do for the audience if they make you an offer, which is to get a bunch of people connected, aligned, attached to this thing. Not to you necessarily as the storyteller, not to, an idea of the thing, but the actual product. And so if you want to sell a microdrama or a vertical series while this window's open, while major publications are reporting that this is going to be a $26 billion annual industry, if you want to be in that industry, you got to start making the thing. Don't talk about it. Don't be the person running around with ideas, but nothing actually for people to see. This is a low barrier to entry on having product in this industry. What you need is a modern smartphone, minimal lighting, no fancy microphones, okay? Good daylight is good enough as far as lighting is concerned. You see me sitting here talking to this modern smartphone. I don't have a microphone on my chest. I don't have any fancy lights set up. I'm sitting in my kitchen in front of a window that can get good sunlight on me to light this thing up to go through a cinematic lens on a modern smartphone. That's all you need to make your vertical series. Now, you are going to need additionally a script. Maybe. You're going to need characters, maybe, unless you're going to be all of them. You're going to need a few other elements that you would need for any sort of production, but the smallest, the minimum viable version of each one of those elements. You put them together. You make one pilot episode of your vertical series. You launch that on socials. And you market it and you tell people about it and you send audiences to it and you send it to your email list and you text your friends about it and you tell them to send it to people and you build energy around it. And if it grows to a critical mass of engagement and of eyeballs and of people saying, I really like that, then you make another one, then you make another one, then you make another one. And suddenly now you have 4, 5, 6 minutes worth of your microdrama, which is enough for an executive somewhere with a mandate to go and find good microdramas and vertical series to buy. That is enough for them to see the promise of your vertical series or your microdrama. And now suddenly you are in what is the future of this industry, which is Hollywood, okay? Now, if you want somebody to walk you step by step how to do that, I have two things to offer you. They go together, all right? Number one, I have a free webinar this Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time. It is called How to Launch Your Vertical Series in 2026. There are a limited amount of tickets because I can only fit so many people on a Zoom call. You're going to go sign up for that at the link in my bio. While you're there, in the link in my bio, there's another form. It is an interest form for a vertical series challenge that I am designing to help people who really want to make their move on this fast, right? They're ready to put one foot in front of the other and make this happen. If you want to be one of those people in this first cohort of my vertical series challenge, I'm not asking you to sign up or pay for anything right now. All I'm asking you to do is go look at the interest form and tell me. It's got very few, like 5 or 6 questions. I just want you to tell me how you want me to design that program so that it's right for you in supporting you to get you launched with your vertical series so that you can jump into this thing. All right, go do that now. At Chad Sand is my Instagram. You'll find both links in the bio. You can also find them in the caption of this channel right here. Listen, this is an important moment. Do not be selfish. Share this video with your friends. Subscribe right now to the channel because I'm going to keep bringing more information about this particular thing and other layers of how to break into creative industries. I want to see you back here. Go subscribe. I'm Chad Sanders. Goodbye.